Um, oh, can, okay, I'd like to call this February 8th meeting of the McLean County Finance Committee to order. And we have all members present so we can conduct business. We have a quorum. Just as a reminder, everyone, as you speak, I know we normally don't like to lean forward, but we need to lean forward into our microphones so the YouTube can pick up our voices. It's not happening very often that we haven't had to do this before, but just be cognizant of that. So the people who are going to watch us later or currently watching have the ability to hear what we're having to say. All right? So with that, I need a motion for approval of the meeting minutes for January 4th. We have a motion by Member Roseman. Is that what you prefer? Okay, Roseman, and a second by Vice Chair Lehman. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, then all in favor of approving those meeting minutes, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Very good, motion passes. Are there any members of the public or employees, county employees?
Chairman Metzger, we've had no request to speak this evening.
Very good. We will move on to number 4, departmental matters, and 4A. Michelle Anderson, 4A, 1A. She actually does have, it's good to see you, welcome. She has an action and it's request approval to retain, is it Nyhart?
Yes,
As
ma'am.
the county's actuarial firm, and she'll do a little bit more explanation of that, but I need a motion to put that on the floor. We have a motion by Member Rogel and a second by Member Friedrich. And the floor is yours, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. As Chairman Metzger said, I'm bringing before you a contract for Nyhart Actuarial Services. It's part of our GASB requirements that we have an OPEB evaluation. Obviously, we have no one on staff to do this, and it would not be cost effective to have somebody on staff to do this. It's a highly specialized area. This has been the firm we've used since 2008, and at the committee's request after last year when we had an interim at a substantially cheaper price. We did put it out for bid. Ms. Dreyer and I worked together to get the request for quotes out. We contacted our colleagues at the city and town, and we contacted our outside auditors and got some firms that we know do this sort of business. No one in town does it. You can't just send it to any actuary. It's highly specialized. And we only got one bid back. So we are recommending approval. We are, I don't know at the correct term. We all are.
Does any member have or any questions for Ms. Anderson? Seeing no, seeing no questions, the only thing I would have to say is thank you for the effort. I know that was a request from last year, and so we appreciate the time that you and Ms. Dreyer took to at least try to see if we could get more than who we had in the past. Not that they didn't do a good job, so.
Right, and I've explained before, part of the reason we switch outside auditors is because they are here. I came out of public accounting. I mean, we do have a lot of ties to our outside auditors. I do see the value in that rotation. I literally get an email from these people with the information they need. I send it through a client portal. They give me the report back. I mean, I couldn't pick these people out of a lineup. There's no, you know what I mean? So yes, happy to do it at the committee's request, but, and this is highly specialized. I was actually the one who issued the RFP back in '08, and we just kind of threw a bunch of darts out because it was a brand-new GASB statement, and we didn't know what actuarial services. This time, we actually hard-targeted people who we know do this work, and we still didn't get bids back. So it was kind of
They
interesting.
probably have enough work.
Perhaps.
Yeah, so, very good. Well, thanks again, Ms. Dreyer, thank you. All in favor of accepting or approving to retain Nyhart as our actuarial firm, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. The motion passes. Is there anything else that you want to share with us today?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Member Erickson is very entertaining.
He's at my left. I haven't been able to see him, so it's probably best. Very good. Thank you so much. We'll move on to 4A1A, and that is accept and place on file the county treasurer's monthly financial reports, which we have. And Ms. McNeil is here. May I have a motion to accept these? We have a motion by Vice Chair Lehman and a second by Member Erickson. Welcome. It's good to see you. And the floor is yours, Ms. McNeil.
Thank you. The first report you have is our January sales tax, income tax, PPRT revenue. And obviously, since it's the month of January, there's only 1 month to compare it to. So there's just not a lot of year-to-date information there except for 1 month. But I mean, just looking back to January of 2022, you can see that we continue to see growth. A year ago, we were at 1.5 million for the month of January on receipts. Here during January 23, we're at 1.9 million. So a nice little $399,000 there of growth in just that 1 month. Budget comparison, the annual budget this year, 13.3 million. And when we looking at budget numbers over 12 months, we're coming in very well for the month of January, over budget by $748,000. Obviously, all of that is going to start leveling out as we get into the next 11 months. Last month, a member on the committee asked if I would go back and take a look at the previous years that I've been telling you that, you know, how 2022 was very historical in revenue growth. And you can clearly see that here. 2022 numbers are, they're not audited yet. They're still changing because we're still working through accruals. We've got another month yet that we're going to roll into this and adjust the numbers to actual. But you know, one of the areas in which we saw the most growth was that PPRT. And when I say off to the side, unaudited still being accrued to actual, that is for all three of those categories. That's not just PPRT. It's all three of them. But just the growth in 2022 over 2021 across all three of those categories was about $4 million. So you can see that, you know, it really, truly was very significant. When you look down at the sales tax, we went from 9.1 million, 8.3. But you can see that for several years there, we were just hovering around a little over 6 million, going back and forth on 6 million. And then income tax, we have never been above 3 million. And 2022, we saw receipts of about, you know, a little over 3 million. And then PPRT, again, that 5.6 million, that was very, very significant compared to those prior years. McLean County has had a lot of economic growth. However, the state of Illinois also changed their distribution formulas for PPRT. There was also a major change in corporate tax laws So all of that together, as well as the level of playing field that we saw back in 2021, all of that together is part of what is causing us to be able to recognize revenues at this level. Again, I've still got another month and a half yet to get these numbers firmed up and ready for audit. The shared
May
sales tax.
I just
yes,
want to
I'm sorry.
interject
Go
something
ahead.
we
Yes.
have 2 new members and that level playing field. Could you please provide an explanation? They may already know, but
Sure,
just,
sure. So level the playing field was affected internet sales. And that we weren't able to, or the state of Illinois wasn't able to capture the same level or the sales tax on internet sales like they would be able to capture if you went into, say, Von Maur and made a purchase. So level the playing field was enacted by the state of Illinois, and that basically brought that around so that retailers would be, online retailers would be paying in, and municipalities and local governments in the state of Illinois would get their share, just as if you were to purchase something here in the community. So that's just a brief summary of what that was. But it was significant, and like I said, there's been other significant economic activity in our community, but also the changes that the state made to some of those calculations and so forth. So moving on down into the shared sales tax, the month of January, you can see there, Town of Normal passed along 177,000, Bloomington 249,000, total 427,000 compared to 392,000 back in January of 2022. And when I talk about all of these numbers, City of Bloomington and Town of Normal, they're seeing the same type of growth. So and when you hear Town of Normal talk about their financials, and City of Bloomington, you know, you're going to understand it better because you're seeing right here how McLean County government is benefiting from it. So, and then property tax revenue, obviously right now we've not collected any property taxes. County clerk is working on extension right now. As far as I know, things are on target, and we'll get that during the month of April. But the county's levy running across budget, county levied 40.6 million compared to 38.2 million in 2022. County motor fuel tax, regular county motor fuel 209,000, renewal 146, 356, and then township regular 178 and renewal 124. So a little 302,000 there. So again, not really an area where we can look at comparative information yet.
I do want to recommend, there was at the Transportation Committee yesterday, there was an explanation, a very good explanation to motor fuel tax and how that's used and how it is accrued. But the one thing that sticks in my mind, and I know because being a township supervisor, that even though we're getting tremendous, a significant number or amount of money that we never got before, the cost of commodities went from in a short period of time, I'm thinking 4 to 5 years, it went from $1.60 a gallon to $4 a gallon for the commodities to resurface roads and the oils and the chips and stuff. So I'm certainly not saying that this isn't important. I'm just saying that if we wouldn't have gotten it, we would have been in significantly more challenging times.
Correct, yes. January's investment report, the Illinois funds. We can have treasuries, and we've got treasuries that are going to mature, and we are going to continue to invest in treasuries. But the Illinois funds rate, that's where the bulk of the funds that we use for operating expenses, and we'll be using over the next 4 to 5 months before we start seeing property tax revenue come in. That rate right now in that mini market is 4.32%. That was as of the end of January. Again, I mean, you have to go back several years to see that rate at that level. Our interest income is going to continue to be very important in 2023. Overall, across all funds, $118.9 million. And I actually, when I prepared this report, it was actually back on February 1st, so I wasn't able to bring in January numbers, but I did bring in that money market number from the fund. So, the next report is the nursing home report, and please keep in mind that the nursing home, just like the county, we still have another 2 months yet where we're going to be recording 2022 related expenses and revenue. I think for the most part, except for the interfund transfers, quite a bit of the revenue is recorded. There's a large interfund transfer of almost $200,000 that's got to be recorded yet, and we're in the process of actually posting that now. But you can see that their normal monthly revenue for the month of December was $666.9 thousand. And then looking at, and that is for the month of December on their major revenue category sources, which for the nursing home, their major revenue obviously is from their residents coming in from the Medicaid, the private pay, and the Medicare payments. So for the month of December overall, their revenue was $808,262. Expenses were $1,543,000. During the month of December is really kind of where we true things up. And that's why this number is so high for the month of December, because all of those expenses that were incurred in December that we're getting the bills for here in January and February, by accounting standards, we have to move that back into the prior year. So a lot of that hits during the month of December. But again, please keep in mind the nursing home still has a couple $100,000 in transfers that are yet to come into these numbers. And probably still has some expenses that have to be recorded. But overall, I mean, looking at the nursing home at this point in time, the nursing home expenses exceed revenue by $181,000. And in previous years, right now, we were talking over $1 million. So I feel very good right now with where this is. Hopefully, we'll see these numbers become positive for 2023. In any event, it is a significant change over previous years. And we still have more to go. The payor receivable, as of the end of December, we have a $4.1 million. Would have liked to have seen that number come down during 2022. That would be an area where we need to talk with Mr. Wiley, but again, I think that they're working on that with the contractual work that they have in place. The cash and investments at the end of December, we had $156,245. Cash was down by $310,000 compared to where we started out the beginning of the year. And then looking at fund to equity, the fund to equity for the nursing home at the end of December was $3,370,000. We started off the year with $3,552,000. Again, there's that 181, and that's because of those expenses right now on the books that are exceeding revenue. So, any questions on this? Yes.
Member
Yes.
Erickson?
Thank you. Thank you. Wanted to ask if, and maybe you did this because I can't remember sometimes whether I'm coming or going, okay? But did you give us like a yearly report on the difference between revenue and expenses since we enacted that, the gold ribbon panel or whatever we called it, the blue ribbon panel? Can I get a chart from either the administration or from the county treasurer of the difference between Blue Ribbon Panel issued these recommendations in 2018. I can't remember what year it was exactly, and have them go all the way up to today.
I believe, if I recall, last year that was a request, and I believe that Ms. Taylor provided us kind of a compare to those, but I don't have it right off the top of my head, but that is something that I think would be a wise thing to do again.
Yeah, I can't remember. I mean, maybe it was emailed to me, and I'm sure it was the first thing I looked at. But if it can,
Maybe I saw it in Health Committee. I don't recall. I'm sorry. Because I'm on Health Committee, it's hard to remember which one. But I do recall Mr. Wiley reviewing that and the things that were outstanding. One of the things is kind of the marketing, naming situation. I think most of the other things have been addressed, but I can certainly talk to Ms. Schaefer and see and if she recalls that too. But
I would
Ms.
ask
Taylor?
for clarification, please. Are you asking for a financial report, or are you asking for a
no, I'm
list of-
asking for year-end information, like we get this year-to-date information or year-end information, that these were the revenues for 2019, these were the expenses for 2019.
So you're asking for what we've completed on the Blue Ribbon Report in 2022?
Yeah, starting with the Blue Ribbon Panel when it came out, okay, I can't remember whether it was 2018, so in 2018, the difference between revenue and expenses, there should be a year-end date for revenues, should be a year-end date for expenses, and I'd like to see what they are for each year.
So that would have been provided to you in your CAFR. We can certainly go back and capture that, but to
Well, I
dig
definitely want it
into
captured. I'm
yeah,
not-
we can go back and we can capture,
Okay.
the last 5 years. But to dig into how the Blue Ribbon Panel changed things and started turning the ship.
No, that's not really what I'm asking,
Okay,
because
so you just
using
want-
the Blue Ribbon Panel as the date to start with.
Okay.
I see.
I just
Okay.
don't know what time we passed the
problem.
I can't remember what year we did the Blue Ribbon Panel
Okay.
in.
So those are audited numbers at this point in time. And I mean, if you're just wanting bottom line, revenue, expenses, fund.
Well, I would
equity,
like to
no
see,
problem.
I would like to see if I can see the trend between, here's where the Blue Ribbon Panel came in, they made their recommendations, and this is where we are 5 years since they made their recommendations.
Yes, we could provide that. We can work with the treasurer's office and provide you the specific dates of those recommendations and what has transpired since then.
Did we get that already? I know she said it was in the CAFR, but I can't recall it. I don't know.
It's in the CAFR.
I can't do
But
everything.
we
I mean,
can-
I got a
that's
lot of
okay.
talent,
No,
but
but what you're asking today, it would be very easy to put the numbers down for the last 5 or 6 years and then possibly, consult with Mr. Wiley and see if he can contribute his insight on, and as the county administrator said, also their insight as to what changes have been made where we're starting to see the turn. Because we definitely are starting to see.
that's
the
what I
turn.
want to know. Can we see the turn?
Yes,
that?
definitely.
Good.
You'll be able to
One
clearly
thing
see
I
it.
do want to caution, just because there was the Blue Ribbon Panel, or we've seen a lot of changes, and I'm not saying the Blue Ribbon Panel did a lot of good work, they made, but some of those recommendations were not able to be fulfilled. And so there have been a lot of things that have contributed to this turnaround, and the Blue Ribbon Panel being one, but that's not the only reason. So I don't want to, and again, I don't want to indicate that the Blue Ribbon Panel was not effective and did not
Yeah,
provide
but
us
nobody's,
some
I'm not
good-
making that argument. There's no argument made right here.
You just wanted a date.
Whether, yeah, I said
Perfect.
this is the date. I didn't say the Blue Ribbon Panel was effective. I didn't say it was ineffective. So let's not presume when I'm arguing. I'm just saying, can I see the report?
Sure.
That's all I want. Thank you.
I'm sorry. All right, please proceed.
Any questions? Any further questions on that report? Okay. And then moving on to the Blue Cross Blue Shield comparison. During January, we received a credit of $200,000 from Blue Cross as part of our renewal, and that is reflected in these numbers. The January 22 expenses were $679,000. January 23 expenses, $355,000. So we'll keep that in mind as we move through 2023. So, any questions? Thank you.
Any additional questions or requests? Seeing none, we do need to vote on approving or accepting and placing on file the county treasurer's monthly financial report. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Very good. The motion passes. Any other items that you have for us today, Ms. McNeil? Thank you so very much. We're going to move on to County Clerk for for C1, actions for, or items for action. There are none, but we do have monthly reports that are in the report. I did get a email from our county clerk, and she wanted me just to share a few things. And the elections, there are co-directors, Bradley Byers and Mike Singer will be the co-directors for our upcoming, or for our elections moving forward. They are finalizing some early voting and nursing home judge schedules, so that they're working on that. Early voting actually begins on the 23rd of February, so that we'll begin to see those people down in the lobby. And there is a wait list on judges, so that's positive also. The early voting site for the election, they have a voting center, and they're working on at the ISU Civic Engagement Team for the last few years. And Bone Center will not be the voting center as it has been in the past, but the Founder Suite will be a polling place. They've got interns that are working on those things, and the civic engagement team at ISU, they're promoting and providing transportation for early voting to the government center. Each polling place, as we know, will have Democrats and Republican judges, and refresher course for those techs and lead judges are taking place, and new judge training will be taking place in the fall of '23. There was one thing that I think our treasurer mentioned, and that would be getting out all of the comp reports from tax extension. They're still waiting. They haven't gotten them out. It's usually in April. They probably will not have a problem getting them done, but they're still waiting on some things from the state railroad and pollution control numbers to come in. So they're still on target for April. And I'm not sure if this applies to the county board, but it definitely applies to township and others, and that's the statement of economic interest. Those come through the treasurer, or excuse me, the county clerk's office, and those are getting, we're beginning to see all of those come through. I think they are due May 1st, if I am correct. So that will continue. Vital records, they are looking at demos on some maybe improvement of technology. So that they're hoping that will happen. The recorder's office, they have some, they've been doing some looking at bringing reclassification requests to this committee, and a fee study report is being looked at, as well as a detailed report on what the auditors throughout the state are finding out regarding the RHSP grant, which is the rent, I forget what that acronym is, rent assistant. It's a grant for helping with rent, and so there are fees that the recording that are going to have to be approved. Mark has attended some meetings on this, and even though the bill passed, the board is going to have to pass a fee increase that has been pushed down from our legislature. And so we'll see an increase in fees in our recorder's office upcoming. And it looks like it could be an additional $10. So, but that affects all counties, not just our county. And that is all she had to share. Does anybody have any questions? I can try to answer them. Otherwise, we will have, you can certainly go to Ms. Michael and talk to her if you have any questions. I do want to make one personal observation about the recorder's office. I recently had something done with the recorder's office and also with the circuit clerk. And I was very pleasantly surprised that the turnaround on the stuff that was sent in was very short. In fact, the circuit clerk, we had a one-day turnaround. I was able to get certified copies on something that I filed. And then with the recorder of deeds, it was about a week and a half turnaround on a quitclaim deed. So I just wanted everybody to know that the efficiencies that are within our county, at least from my perspective, were very good. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Mark and then also Mr. Everhart for their efforts. So nothing more for the county clerk. We are moving on to 4D, and that is Marshall Thompson. And she's the director of our animal control. She doesn't have any action items, but she does have a monthly report. And Marshall?
Good evening. How's everyone? Everything's going really well. We have a lot of dogs and cats and kittens that need forever homes. So if you guys could give us a shout out to anyone who might be interested, come on down and we'd be happy to adopt anyone, a puppy or kitten.
Does anybody have any questions? All right. No questions. Seeing none. Thank you again. Please thank your staff for all they do, because I know this is busy, but it's going to get busier, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So we're ready and preparing for the seasonal activity of spring, so it won't be long. We'll be sending out geese press releases.
Very good. Thank you so much. Then we'll move on to 4E, and that's Tim Jorsek. And he is our assessor. He has no items. He does have his report in here. And Now, I believe, since we don't have anything else, we'll move on to 4F, 1A, and that's request approval of an request approval of an ordinance transferring monies from the County General Fund 001 to the Children's Advocacy Center -0129, the Court Security Fund 0141, and the IDPA, I guess that's 4D, Fund 056, and the Tort Judgment Fund 0135 for fiscal year 2023. And may I have a motion to put that on the floor? I have a motion by member or Vice Chair Lehman and a second by member Roseman. And Ms. Taylor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Metzger. This item, as well as the next two items that we are requesting approval for, our request to transfer money to assist the county, should it be needed, and transfer those funds so that we can complete transactions in the first few months of the year before we have the distribution of the first property tax installment. If these funds are not needed to be transferred, that does not occur.
This is not uncommon. We see quite a few of these in this committee because, as Ms. Taylor said, we don't get any revenue coming in until June. And so until that revenue begins, sometimes we begin to see some shuffling of funds, but that does not mean that we are having any issues. It's just a common. But if you have questions, please ask. That we don't want to imply that this is not something we could question or need clarification. So we do have a question by Vice Chair Lehman.
Yeah, thank you. So I completely understand that this is a normal occurrence, so much in fact that many of these were on the docket last year about this time. Just curious with the tort judgment fund, just because that one is, $2.3 million, it's a pretty big one transferring side to side. Could you give an example or two of some of the things that fall under that fund and what that represents?
Tort judgment would include our health, medical expenses related to our juvenile detention center, as well as our jail. Tort also includes our civil division of our state's attorney's office, as well as all of our insurance and liability responsibilities for the county. I would like to just explain too, we do this every single year for all three of these action items, and these numbers that we present to you are estimates of what might be needed. If they are not needed, those transfers are not made.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Additional questions? All right, we'll vote on 4F1A, and that is to transfer those funds we just talked about. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're moving on to 4F1B, and that's request approval of an ordinance transferring monies from the Health Department Fund 0112 to Persons with Developmental Disability Fund 0110 for fiscal year 2023. I may have a motion. We have a motion by member Roseman and a second by member Friedrich. And I don't know, is there anything else we need to talk about on these?
I don't believe so unless there's questions.
Any questions? Very good. We will vote on that. All in favor of 4F1B, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on, for F1C, request approval of a resolution transferring monies from the Working Cash Fund 0002 to the FICA Social Security Fund 0130 and the IMRF Fund 0131 for fiscal year 2023. May I have a motion, please? We have a motion by Member Rogal and a second by Vice Chair Lehman. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor of for F1C, say aye. Opposed? Very good. Motion passes. And now we'll go to 4F2, and that would be other items to be presented as information. I think we have something, right?
We do. So it is necessary for us to have a stand-up session next Thursday prior to our regularly scheduled county board meeting in reference to our insurance renewal. And Mr. Spanos has some documents that we'll be passing out and a short presentation to share with you in reference to that stand-up action.
So ordinarily at this meeting in February, this would be part of the packet. We'd have an action item available for you, some documents to review, and a presentation for those of you who have not been on this committee before. Unfortunately, we did not get the final proposal until after the agenda went out on Monday. So we had asked for some adjustments in the proposal. What you have in front of you is a memo, and in the second page of that, or third page, is a spreadsheet that summarizes the charges. I tried to hit some highlights in the memorandum that you have in your hands, which I'll do real quickly now. I put the summary of the Gallagher and their relationship in for those of you who may not be familiar with this process from past meetings. You'll see that the total increase is about $217,000 from last year, which works out to about, let's see, it's under 20%, but it's close to it, 16.8% increase. The majority of that increase comes from about 3 policies, one of which is the excess liability policy. We've in the past have been insured by a company who has decided to leave that market, and we believe Gallagher has informed us that they were way underselling their product in the past. They just didn't have it priced correctly, and we were the beneficiary of that and not having to pay as much as what the rest of the market. If you remember back a year ago when Rich Stokluska was here and talked about that policy, he talked about how we were lucky and that the rest of the market was much more expensive than the company that we were with. Well, that company's gone now, so it's not an option anymore. And in addition to that, in the past, we had a $2 million policy, a $3 million excess, and then a $10 million excess. The structure of that has changed somewhat in that it's in the current market almost impossible to find a company that's willing to write the full $10 million excess. So now instead we have 2 layers of $5 million, which changes the pricing structure of that. We always have an option. We can lower our limits and save some money. We currently will have $15 million over our $250,000 SIR, self-insured retention, which is like a deductible. I think we've probably talked about some of the cases before, so you're familiar with that. So currently we have $15 million over our $250,000. We could always go down to $10 million. I don't recommend it. In most years we don't come anywhere near that. We don't come anywhere close to it. The one year we decide not to go down to, or to go down to 10 million will be the year that we'll have a $20 million claim. It's just in the risks and evaluating the risks the county has, having $15 million in coverage is probably the appropriate amount. And I wouldn't recommend not getting that extra layer of coverage. Some other issues we experienced was a pretty good increase in the property policy. That's still with Travelers again. They wrote it again, but they gave us a pretty sizable increase. And part of that's based on the same, inflation right now that we're all seeing, the costs of replacement or repairs going up in everything. So rates have to follow that. But I think another part of that is probably our loss history last year was a little hard on the property policy. If you'll recall, we had that sizable water loss to jail, the pipe break, and then that was followed up shortly thereafter by the flooding out at animal control. So those were two pretty sizable claims. So I'm sure that that loss history affected the amount of premium for this year. The one thing that there's one decision that needs to be made, and that's with respect to our cyber insurance. You'll see that Travelers is who we've been with in the past. We have a 28% increase in that premium from $50,000 to $65,000 for $3 million in coverage. One of the reasons we got this late was we wanted to explore the possibility of going to $5 million in coverage instead of just $3 million in coverage. The cyber liability, if it were to hit us and hit us hard in the wrong place, that $3 million may not be enough. So we were curious of what the additional $2 million layer would cost. We have also another company, Cowbell is the name of the company. I don't believe it's related to Will Ferrell, but he is an advocate for more cowbell.
It's Christopher
Well,
Walken.
Christopher Walken, but Will Ferrell's the one that's hitting the
Oh, yeah, that's the Saturday Night Live
with
one.
the
Yeah,
short,
all right,
the
yeah.
short shirt and okay. So you knew the reference, or at least. So anyway, Cowbell will offer us a decent savings, and we're told that they're rated as highly, a top-rated company. They're not a substandard by any means. So if we want to go to $5 million in coverage, we can do that for. It's a little confusing, but you'll see under the column G, all the way to the right, it lists the options. You've got a $3 million Cowbell with a $50K retention at $52.8, and then another $2 million times $3 million. That's over the top of that $3 million for $34. So the total would be $86, which is an additional $21,000 of our total premium. The one other thing that I would bring to your attention is always we under budgeted by less than $1,500. Kathy Dwyer deserves a lot of credit for hitting this almost right on the nose. We worked with AJ Gallagher, got some information, and Kathy anticipated this well, and we're almost exactly on. It's a $1,400, right about $1,400 change. So outstanding job there. So if we go to the higher cyber, then we've got a $20,000. We'd have to adjust the budget with that for an additional $20,000. Those are the decisions that we'll want you to make next week in stand-up. I'm available, obviously, all week for any questions that you might have, or questions now, if you want to discuss it now.
I think I would prefer to have as much conversation as we need today, because to have a stand-up and have that kind of conversation is challenging and hard to manage because we still have a county board meeting following. So I would prefer, we're not voting on anything today, but please, let's try to get these questions answered. And then additional questions that you may have, certainly Mr. Spanos is available for those additional questions that you may have, so we are prepared for next Thursday to vote on the direction that we want to go. So we do have a question, Member Friedrich, and then we will have Member Erickson. So Member Friedrich.
On the right-hand side of the notes, TRIA not included in pricing. Can you explain TRIA?
Oh, that's TRIA. What is TRIA? I'm trying to remember. My availability goes way down as the questions get harder.
Oh,
Especially
you can get back with me on that.
I'm trying, it's a real simple acronym and I can't remember off the top of my head.
I was just wondering if it was significant.
It might be terrorism risk insurance, something, yeah.
Okay.
It's something that we have always opted out of in the past. It's always been in the notes. I remember discussing it in years past. I believe that's exactly what it is. It's terrorism risk.
Second question, do we anticipate the next coming year to see increases like this? Is this a reoccurring thing? You know, these insurance company, sometimes they try to buy business, which happened with our last insurer, and now we're playing catch up.
Yeah, the difference here, I know what you're saying. You're absolutely right. There are sometimes get in the door.
Yep.
You got to remember that in this case, Gallagher is our broker and not the insurance company. So they're hired by us or paid by us to go out and get us the best deals that they can find. So they're always constantly on the look for a better deal and to avoid those sorts of situations. But to answer your question, you know, I think the last couple of years we've had some pretty significant increases. I want to say when I started my first year doing this, we maybe broke the $1 million barrier. And here we are just 3 years later and we're at $1.5 million. So over the course of about 3 years, we've increased almost 50% or roughly 50%, maybe a little more. So yeah, it's significant. But like I said, there've been some, you know, a couple of years ago we had the law enforcement issues that the you know, huge focus across the country on those risks. So insurers of those risks were suddenly, some of them, paying large settlement amounts and realizing that they needed to adjust their premium in order to pay for those large settlement amounts. So that trend caused the premium a couple years ago to skyrocket. You had a number of companies, because of the risks involved with that sort of insurance, get out of the market. So you got fewer people, in any analogy you can come up with, fewer people selling corn, you're going to spend more, you're going to charge more for your corn, or whatever the product is. And that's what we have here, is you have fewer entities selling the product, and now they can control the price and raise the price, and it's more difficult to obtain. So there's some of that going on. And then on top of it, we've had the highest inflation we've had in how many years, right? So I think all of those factors come together this year and over the last couple of years to result in a 50% increase in 3 years. But I was thinking the same thing as I'm looking at this. It's got to stop somewhere, right?
Yeah.
You can't go year after year after
Right.
year, right? So what we've done, and you know, we've worked with Gallagher, and we've tried to get them, you know, to go out, and they've shopped it. They work on it. I think we get them the figures or our information, our applications in November, and they work on it until February, trying to get companies interested in making bids and for our coverage, and this is the best that they could come up with.
For what it's worth, AJ Gallagher is my personal insurance out on the farm, so I have a real comfort level with them. They are a good company for whatever that's worth. You know, we're dealing with a Class A company, and I'm grateful for that. What else? I think that's it. I make it think of something else. Thank you.
Sorry, I had to lean on Tony to get the terrorism.
I know what it is. My other question. Do we do an internal audit ourselves to make sure we're not missing anything? I know that's their business, but they're in business to sell insurance too. So the higher the premium, such as our deductibles claim, you know, what if we were to raise it $1,000 or whatever out of pocket? You know what I mean?
$1,000 would be a drop in the bucket, but
Right.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, we could always explore. We haven't since I've been here. You could explore raising your SIR, but how high do you go? Right now, I'll tell you that since I've been here 3 years, we've had one liability claim exceed our self-insured retention. So our loss history on the liability side is really having no effect on this. We had one claim, it's a big one, the one we just recently settled, right? But we've only had one claim exceed that 250. So what we're doing under 250 is on us. We're paying that. So could we go higher with an SIR? Maybe. I mean, does it matter if it doesn't, if we don't reach it, it doesn't matter what it is, right? But I'm not sure how much relief that could actually get us. And then the question is, when you have the one big one, you know, do you really want to be, you know, 500,000 in your SIR? You know, so it's just a philosophical question, just like we do at home when we pick our deductibles on our cars. You know, how much do we want to save on the premium by, you know, taking on the higher collision or comprehensive deductible, right? If you have a loss, you wish you had the lower deductible, right? So, but no, to answer your question, as far as like an audit, any kind of formal process, no. Haven't really explored that as an option, and I'm not sure where we would go with it exactly, Bill. I'm not sure how that would work.
It's getting expensive.
It is,
I guess,
no doubt.
take that back, or it's my opinion on this committee, it's getting expensive, and, but I don't know what the fix is. So,
Well, maybe we can explore some options when we go into our renewal next year, trying to figure out what options there might be out there. See what we can figure out.
Thank you.
Member Erickson?
Please don't presume that I intend anything by my question, okay? It's just a question. Was this in the packet?
No.
The stuff here? Okay. How does this process differ from what we did last year? I don't know if you recall.
Which
What is this?
process?
Well, I'm trying to figure out if this was the same process when we had the other insurance companies in here trying to bid for this. Is this a different process or is it the same thing?
Okay, this process is slightly different from what happened last year.
Okay,
It is the same process that we had in all the years past, the two that are, since I've been here, and as I understand it before. And what happened last year is we had another outside broker, sort of, to come forward and make a proposal to us, which it's a consortium as opposed to going with insurance companies. So it's a group of other municipal bodies who pool their money and they're kind of insure one another. It's a little different setup, it's a little different approach. As you recall, we had Mr. Stukluska come in and explain to us what the difference was and why we had this program versus that program, and what this program brought to the table that program didn't. And this committee opted to go with what we've been doing for years and stick with Gallagher, who we've been with apparently way longer than I've been around here. So it is a little different than last year. It's very similar to what we did the year before and in years past.
okay. I mean, I would say that, you know, some questions a county board member can ask, he could ask outside the county board meeting if he has the document before he comes to the county board meeting. That's not meant to be a judgment, but that's why the question has to be asked here. I mean, you're not going to know the questions to ask, and sometimes you can refine your questions if you've had an opportunity to talk to somebody. I just want to make sure that we're not going to run into the same issues that we did last year. We had all these gentlemen out here wanting to bid for that, and we don't have a problem with that. I mean, we're not doing that this year. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes, that's what I'm saying. You know, as I said when I started, we didn't get these documents until after the agenda was sent out. And it was actually after I left the office on Monday to head to another meeting. I didn't get it until Tuesday morning.
Well,
Which is-
I'm not judging you
No, no, no.
when
I
you
just
sent
want
out
you-
the documents. I'm just saying, I could have asked, because you got these documents late, you gave it to us now. That's fine, that's great. Thank
Tried
you
to
for
get it to you
that.
as soon as I
I know you did. I'm not judging.
Understood.
Okay, I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying that people who watch this may understand, well, why didn't he ask these questions? Because I haven't seen this document yet.
Sure.
I've never seen it yet. Okay?
Chuck,
this
I
is a-
think
this is-
some of this insurance company is just getting slow, getting us information. That's
Yeah.
the other part of it.
Yeah, but it's not a judgment. I'm just,
Right. No, no.
I'm explaining to people out there
Right.
maybe
We
watching
are.
this that, that I'm trying to figure out what the process is, and I didn't get a chance to ask a question before this meeting or before this time because we didn't get the information till late.
I would encourage anybody on the committee who has a question between now and Thursday to email me that question. Don't copy the rest of the board because you can't do that. And I will make sure that I get you an answer. As long as we're not having a contemporaneous conversation, we're not violating the Open Meetings Act, I will be able to, I can supply my answers to the entire board, as long as you're not talking among yourselves about what's going on. So if you have a question, send it to me and I will answer it, and make sure that by the time you get to your Thursday stand-up meeting, you're fully advised and all your questions have been answered. And then if necessary, we can talk about it in stand-up.
I'd like to make a request that we approach AJ Gallagher in November and start working on this sooner if we're going to have them review it or put it out there.
They did put it out in November. That's
But
that's when we started working with them.
In November? Oh, I thought you said
They sent-
December.
No, they sent them to me. I forget exactly when I get them. It takes me about a month to turn them around because I have to go to all the various departments and collect all it's like 16 different applications. And so we're going to IT, we're going to every department who has a vehicle, transportation. This year they asked for new schedules. They wanted schedules of all of the county's property, personal property, construction equipment. It's a lot of work that goes into putting it together.
I can
So we
imagine.
start somewhere in the fall, and then they get the applications maybe the 1st of December, end of November, something like that. Okay? It's not an ideal situation, and we'll do what we can to get it to you earlier. Understood.
But we're not going to have this 11th hour of another group coming to us and asking to bid, which is what we had last year.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about, if it's a completely different process or they didn't want to bid, I would have asked you before the meeting, because, hey, how's this different than last year? And you guys, Chuck, here's how it's different. Okay, but I can't do that because I'm here now. I guess I could ask you after the meeting, but, I kind of wanted to know now. So,
I don't anticipate anything different.
okay.
I am a bit concerned about our cyber insurance. I don't believe that 3 million will cover us if we have a serious issue. And so as much as I applaud Ms. Dreyer on her estimate on our insurance from a budget perspective, I really would prefer to see a 5 million. And I know that's going to cost us $20,000, but I have tremendous concern with our limit on our cyber insurance. So that is where I stand. I don't know if anybody has any other. I would prefer to increase that. Again, we're not voting, but Member Erickson.
Yeah, I don't disagree. That's a valid concern. Do we have any statistics to look at, like what has happened in the past, other counties, what the insurance companies are looking at? So, because I have to believe you just didn't pick 3 million? The 3 million out of thin air. There had to be a reason for it.
So the recommendations from NACO and the Cyber Security Committee, for which our Director of IT sits on for NACO, recommends a higher cyber insurance coverage than the 3 million. They would recommend anywhere from 5 to 10 for a county of our size.
How'd we come up with 3 then?
This is a developing product and a developing issue, right? 2 or 3 years ago, there weren't as many companies concerned about it or offering the product. As I recall it, the coverage is offered to us the first time we took the cyber insurance, which I think was just a couple of years ago, was $1 million. And then they had $1 million and $3 million. And as the market develops and as the insurers get more and more information, claim history, whatever, we get recommendations like this from NACO that say get more. And it's really a developing area of the law. I think that you see more and more situations where hackers are getting involved and they're developing the risk. And just like our auditor talked about the specialized field of actuarial science, this is all based on actuarial science and their predictions of what the risks are.
But did we use 3 million just because that's what we've used in the past, or how did we?
This year?
Yeah.
No, well, sure. They took last year's coverage and said, what's it going to cost to have the same coverage?
Okay.
And they would have offered us the $3 million thinking that that's what we wanted. But because of other recommendations, and we met with them and we said, well, there's some, at least some information that suggests we should have more coverage. What will that cost us? And that's why we got the subsequent bid.
Okay, see, this is a good conversation because you draw the answer out of the person, okay? I mean, sometimes you don't know the answer right up top off your head. And you have to draw and sometimes you're trying to guess what I'm asking you, and sometimes I'm not asking the question right. We have both problems, okay? I mean, but, I'm just trying to figure out what happened here, that we started out with 3, and now we're going from 5 to 10. I mean, and you're just basically saying, if I paraphrase you correctly, well, we've always had 3, and that's what they gave it, but they bid it back to us at 3, okay? But we've seen some information that says it ought to be higher than that. And we're suggesting to you that maybe it ought to be higher than 3. Is that correct? I mean, that's essentially what happened. Thank you. It's easy. It's easy to get to this point. Just draw the question. Just draw the answer out of someone. Thank you.
Vice Chair Lehman?
Thank you. So since you mentioned that that NACO suggested 5 to 10, and knowing that our quotes here are for 3 or 5, at what point do we entertain the conversation of is 5 enough? And is, overall with knowing that that's NACO's recommendation, are there other recommendations, and is that what administration and what you would suggest in going with that 5? Just want to make sure that.
So with any insurance, it's kind of a guessing game of what is adequate coverage. And if you don't have a claim, then it's, sufficient coverage or excess coverage. And if you have a large claim, then you might be wishing you had more. I am comfortable with the 3 million, but I would recommend, it's the recommendation of administration, that we expend that extra that's listed on your page, and I would recommend 5 million. I don't want to speak for civil attorney, but he can speak for himself.
There is a clause in our policy, I'm sure, for underinsured.
In which policy?
In our policy.
Which policy?
Well,
Underinsured, okay, let me explain. Most people are familiar with uninsured and underinsured coverage in the context of their automobile coverage. And that is in personal lines automobile. That's the mom and pop, regular folks have personal lines automobile insurance. Underinsurance and uninsurance in that context is a statutory creation. It's required. And it applies only to automobile insurance in personal lines, okay? It wouldn't apply to cyber insurance or property insurance or anything like to be under. You don't have underinsurance coverage for that. There's a difference. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
I think, am I understand, please correct me, but I believe if we don't have enough insurance and we have an attack and we are, let's say, 3 million and this cyber attack cost us 6 million, we have an additional 3 million. We do not have any coverage for that. There is no umbrella policy to cover that. Is that correct?
Yes. Just like in our liability insurance, if we have something that's over $15 million, we don't have anything that covers that. And with our property insurance, if we get over the policy limit, we don't have anything that covers that either. This is an assessment of risk and tries to be a scientific prediction of what might happen if you have such a loss and what's the most likely cost. And it requires actuaries, like we were talking about earlier, people that go out and know how to do statistical analysis and probabilities to determine. And then you rely on someone who's, works in this industry, that's familiar with the claims process, the experience of other people, and so on and so forth, and they make a recommendation. Maybe it comes from NACO, maybe it comes from Gallagher, maybe it comes from a collection of, different people. And at the end of the day, you have to make a value judgment. And the question then, it would be incumbent upon you, or what you would have to decide is, okay, if you want 10 million, how much is that going to cost? We can, we're talking about right now, we're talking about $80-some thousand for 5 million. Now, the next 5 million is always going to be cheaper than the first 5 million, but not necessarily a lot cheaper. It might cost you another 50 grand or more. I don't know. That's just a guess. I don't know what it is. But, you can go as high as someone will sell you in the limits. It's just going to cost you more money. At this point, you have to decide whether or not you have a reasonable level of comfort at this coverage level for that cost. And that's every insurance. Renter's insurance, if you rent an apartment to, $15 million in liability coverage, it's the same analysis. Are you comfortable with the coverage you have for that cost? And that's what we're bringing to you. We think this is an appropriate amount of coverage. We can't possibly, predict or say absolutely it's going to be, but we think it probably will be.
So I wish you had a crystal ball. That'd be a whole lot more fun. But knowing that we don't, and that 5 million is one of the things on the table. In addition to that, I'm sure that our IT team has done a lot to prevent. But I'm wondering if, in addition to knowing that there is a possibility that 5 million couldn't be enough. I was just curious if we do have processes or something that we could maybe build in and consider for more preventative maintenance to partner with insurance. And do our insurers offer us suggestions of preventative maintenance along the way? And is that something that Gallagher has given us supplementary before? Do we have somebody that does that kind of stuff externally as well?
So the first thing I would say is, if I did have a crystal ball, I love my job, but I wouldn't be here. I'd have the 6 numbers and I'm out of here. When in November, I'm probably the bane of Craig's existence. When I get these applications, I go down to him for all of the cyber, all this information. They participate in it. Some of it's very technical. We are constantly adding and working on, and Craig would have to come and tell you what those things are, but there are absolutely preventive measures taken, and we are also Craig and I have sat in on a couple of training sessions with the insurance companies that are providing this insurance, or with our brokers that would give us a conversation and advice, suggestions on certain ways to handle certain things. So yes, the answer to your question is yes. We do those things, and we work on them, and we work with our broker and our insurance companies to do that.
I would add to that we also have outside recommendations from our outside auditors, including PIN tests, which are the penetration tests that we complete every year. So we are engaged in many activities through our IT department and our employees as a whole to protect ourselves. and that weighs into other factors within McLean County in addition to how much we get in cybersecurity insurance.
Is there any appetite from anyone to look at increasing it even more than 5 million? That was I mean, when I saw this, I'm like, golly, 5 million seems to be, 3 million just didn't seem high enough for me. But do we have an appetite to get an estimate on 10 or somewhere between 5 and 10? I'm just throwing this out. Again, we are having a discussion. We are not voting. Voting will take place on a week from Thursday. So no, this coming a week from Thursday. So I guess we need to make sure we have everything we need to be able to vote.
I'm just wanting to agree with you to at least get the estimate on what, at least another, up to 5 million would be, and if they gave us an estimate for anything over that, I would agree to that, getting an estimate.
Member Erickson?
Well, if we do that, I would like to see some type of statistics. I mean, is there anything out there that can tell us what other counties are doing, or we can gauge against what type? I mean, you can also overinsure in this world. I mean, that's possible. And is there any numbers we can look at? Anything we can look at?
So to answer your question, first off, I would say my recommendation is take the 5 million. I think it's NACO that's recommended it, and I think they're comfortable with it. But
Well,
that
I'm
being
comfortable
said-
with 5 myself, but I'd like to know, but if other members,
Understood. If you want to send us forward to try and find more information, we can work on that. And I can get you what I can, and we can talk about it on next Thursday.
well, I would say from my perspective that, and it's only my perspective for what it's worth. I would say that the 5 million, I'm comfortable with that. But if we're going to go look at numbers higher than that, we ought to have something to base that on other than just, let's just do 10. I mean, we ought to have more than just that if we're going to do more than that.
So for what it's worth, Gallagher's our broker, and Gallagher came in and recommended the 3 million. And it was our inquiry based on NACO and other information that we decided that, okay, maybe it would be prudent to go to 5 million. What would that cost us? So that's why you have that additional coverage summary in there, the cost. We didn't ask about 10 million because frankly, I don't think we thought that was something that we thought we needed to do. But if it's this board that decides, or this committee that decides. So if you guys feel like we should, or recommends in this case, because we're not deciding anything tonight, if you would like me to go forward and find additional information and see how prudent it would be to go to 10 million and why, I can work on that. Get you whatever information I can find.
I think Member Erickson has raised a good question. You don't just go to 10 because we think we want to insure up to 10. To know when a cyber attack has taken place, what has it cost an organization? And I think that is an organization like ourselves, because we've seen cyber attacks on health hospital groups, and we're not the same as a hospital group. We need to compare apples and apples, I guess. So to have that information, if it comes back that there's been 3 and they've all been over $20 million, then that gives us a little bit of a, wow, what should we do? And if it gets back that there haven't been any, then, we've got at least that information to consider, I think. Is that where you're at, Member Erickson?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that summarizes it well. I mean, if you want me to add another 5 million to it, then you better give me a good reason to. If it's just, if we're going to go from 5 to 10, other than just, I think it ought to be 10. I mean, because, the way I understand it right now, you're saying that, correct me if I'm wrong, NACO has basically said that they're recommending 5 million. They think that's a prudent point, and I'm going to assume that NACO has a good reason for that. Maybe I shouldn't presume that, but I think I have to. But because we've always had 3. But like I'm saying, it could be you go out there and no one has any statistics on it. It could be no one gives you anything back. Okay, well, we don't have anything for you, but at least we have that as an answer. Hey, there's nothing out there. That's your answer. There isn't anything.
And the other thing to truly consider is to raise this to 5 million is taxpayer money to the tune of $21,000. That's significant money, in my opinion, that, we are going to have to adjust that budget to pick up a little bit more. But that's a significant sum of money. $21,000 is somebody's salary, it's more than somebody's salary. So in some cases, so I guess that's the other piece that we have to continue to think about is by increasing or we are going to cost our taxpayers more. However, if we don't insure properly, we will cost our taxpayers more also. So there's that line. And we've got to, how much risk are we willing to take? So, so moving forward, I think Mr. Spanos has an idea of what we need for the cyber insurance to have that discussion. Is there any other questions? Member Rogel.
And this isn't for next week, but maybe in the next 5-6 months, try and figure out what other counties around our size are doing. Sangamon County, Peoria County, what kind of insurance do they have as far as cybersecurity goes, and whether or not they've had problems? Because that might give us at least an idea, similar size-wise, what other counties are doing as well.
I don't want to cut us short. I want to make sure everything is, all questions are answered. So one more time, anything else that we need to address? Okay. Seeing no other questions, I would ask that we be put on the stand-up early, please, not at the end. Just because we may, if we run long, I don't want us to be, if somebody else runs long, I'm willing to blame them. I'm not willing to blame us. So put us first, if you don't mind, if that's possible, on stand-up.
I will confer with Ms. Morlock and make sure that you are first on the stand-up list.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so I think the only thing left that we have to do this evening is we need to pay some bills. So we have, Ms. Anderson has approved the bills and they comply to all the adopted ordinances, resolutions, and policies in the county code. So we have a prepaid total of $1,367,321.24. May I have a motion to pay these bills? We have a motion by Member Friedrich and a second by Member Roseman. All in favor? Opposed? Very good. The motion passes, and I believe we are adjourned. Thank you very much for your time.